The American people deserve answers, and we'll keep demanding them, as we did 5 years ago. And that's the angle. All right, here with a unique perspective is Michael LaRosa, who served as a special assistant to President Biden and was the press secretary for First Lady Jill Biden. Also with me, journalist Batya Ungar-Sargon. Michael, let's start with you. You were in the White House. Did any journalists, especially the ones we're hearing a lot from now, run around a podcast, trying to hawk their book, they ever ask you about Biden's apparent and, to most people, visible decline?
I think so. I mean, the one, like Alex Thompson, to be fair, maybe Annie Linsky from the Wall Street Journal, but that was probably maybe Peter Baker as well. But that was probably about it. And I don't know, I think Alex Thompson's reporting is quite public and, obvious now. And, look, he faced he was a pariah at the Biden White House for sure, because he was writing and reporting on very uncomfortable things for that White House.
Well, what year was that, Michael?
I mean,
it wasn't in 2020. It definitely wasn't when we were talking about it. I mean, we were on this in 2019. Batya remembers 2019, through 2019, all the way into 2020. The pandemic hit. Then it was into the basement for Biden. So he kind of got a reprieve. Mm-hmm. But what are you talking about? 2023? Because
I left at the end of
that?
2022.
Yeah.
So I mean, he was probably the only one really doing the public reporting that was pissing them off. But I would say when he got to Axios, which was after I left, which was when he started to really put his foot on the gas in terms of the reporting the public reporting that you're talking about. But look, the reporters will tell you. I mean, like they were bullied, they were shamed, they went after them aggressively. The White House press staff did, and that's not making an excuse, but I'm just telling you what the culture was like.
Who cares?
Right.
But I'm sorry to interrupt, but Batya, that's the whole purpose of being in the press, right? You're supposed to be pushed back on. I mean, you're supposed to be pushing for the truth. So with all due respect to those, reporters who are now writing books, I mean, they could have used any number of platforms to raise a red flag about this. Or am I missing something here? Because I was covering this for years, and there's like two of us covering it.
Right, and of course, when it comes to President Trump, they have no problem being unpopular with the White House, right? You're totally right, Laura. The media here is the real scandal. Of course, the people in Biden's orbit were trying to protect him. That makes sense. The question is, why was the media carrying water for the Democratic Party? And the answer is because they were deathly afraid that Donald Trump would win, not because he's a threat to democracy the way they were always saying, but because his policies represent a threat to the hegemony of the elites. The media in America are part of the elites, and so their interests, their economic interests, are aligned with the rich. And that is why they carry water for the Democrats. It is so simple. And Donald Trump was the first president in his first term to shrink the income inequality in this country in 60 years. And so the media fought him tooth and nail. And I'm so glad you're pointing it out, that the media is the real original sin here. It's not accountability when you speak truth to power to somebody who has no power anymore and is a cancer-ridden old man who can't hurt you anymore. When they had access, they carried water for him. And now that he has no power, they're lining up to kick him, and it's disgusting.
Yeah, I think the point is, well, hold on, Michael, I think the point again is that they have no problem getting, enormous pushback from Trump, and they kept staying with the P-tape, the dossier, the denying the Hunter Biden laptop, denying the border was open, denying crime among illegals, denying that inflation was raging. None of that. I mean, it was kind of like, well, but we're after Trump. And so all of that got to pass. So my point is, the fraud goes from the condition of Biden all the way through the policy. I'm not the cancer or when it started or when it didn't. To me, that's secondary. Michael.
So I'm not going to defend the press's lack of curiosity, such as it was. I'm not going to defend the liberal media as you would describe it. I'm sure most people in the media are liberal. However, you're giving them way too much credit that they are ideological. I got to be honest with you, as a former producer at a place like MSNBC, Trump is the best thing that ever happened to the media. He is incredibly important to their bottom line. He is better copy than the Bidens ever were. I mean, to
so
say
you think
that
they wanted him all to stay in power? Michael, I mean, you know, I adore you. So, but you think the media was secretly trying to help Trump?
No.
By being
No.
soft on Biden? I mean, that makes zero sense to me, but maybe I'm missing something.
No, I mean, like, look, you're missing the point here, and I'm not explaining it as articulately as I should. Trump loves the media. He loves going back and forth with the media. The Biden White House hated it. They did not like the media. They did not like interacting with the media. Donald Trump does, and the press loves that just as much as Trump does. But the Biden White House, they did not give access the way Trump does.
Well, I understand that. I mean, but Batya, back to my point. There was a concerted effort. There was circle after circle after circle of protection around Biden. It wasn't just Jill. It wasn't just Kirby. It wasn't just Jake Sullivan or the press secretary Zients or Klain. There was a lot of people involved here, and this cannot be swept under the rug. I think there have to be Hill hearings on this because it goes from the cognitive decline all the way to the substantive and deadly disasters for America.
Right. Of course, the point that President Trump made today, which is, OK, so who was actually pushing all of this policy, right? You know, Michael, you're acting like because the media made a bigger deal out of a fake P-tape than they did over 11 million illegal migrants invading this country. Therefore, that was actually a bigger deal. It wasn't. The mainstream media is totally in the bag for the Democratic Party because that is where their interests lie. We cannot accept their rules for things. They turn everything about Trump into a scandal and they protect everything that the Democrats do. And it's finally the American people simply had enough of it. And that's when all of this broke, was when the American people saw with their own eyes what the media worked so hard to keep from them.
Michael, who was running the country? Who was running the country who was really making the big calls? It wasn't Biden. So who was it?
No, it was, look, you're not going to like that answer, but it was Biden. Now, is there a difference between being able to run for president and running the country? Yeah, there is. But no, Biden was running the country, absolutely. But there was, there was a very overzealous, a very rigidness premium paid to protecting the privacy of the Bidens at all costs. From the moment I got there in 2019 until I left it to the end of 22, that's what it was. It is hard for all of us to play doctor and say he had this, he had that. What you can say is that there was a deep overzealousness to protect their privacy, and they paid a reputational and political cost for it.
Yeah, we got to go. Well, look, I think if you have to protect the privacy of the president and keep him behind closed doors and locked away, he's probably not making the calls. That's the point. If you're making the calls, you're answering the question. Trump answered a lot of questions last night at the White House.
He does.
He was just perfectly, comfortable to giving remarks and answering questions when he's asked.
And I've said to you before, he's historically accessible and versus the historic inaccessibility of our White House.
He's competent. He's not committing a fraud on the American public. Michael Batya, thank you very much. Coming up, did Eric Swalwell threaten ICE? See what he said next.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.